Hmm. Let's talk about one of my favorite subjects, the Tao, the experience of yang and yin, and that which is the generator of both, unifies both, and both return to. As human beings who have been playing out the experience of polarity, and then putting polarizing words to ideas, there can be a lot of misconception around yang and yin, especially if the paradox is not embraced. We live in a culture that thinks men are meant to represent yang and women are meant to represent yin. And while on one level, biologically, there is a level of truth to this. However, if you look at the Tao, the symbol for it, you notice in yang, there's a little bit of yin, and in yin, there's a little bit of yang. Both are fully embraced to whatever degree they're needed at the time within the experience. The Tao does not think in terms of gender or biological sex. The Tao is one thing, exploring the idea of the Jungian mechanics and how they work together to create experiences within itself. We hear people sometimes in spiritual communities or maybe even religions talk about the divine masculine or sacred masculine or the divine or sacred feminine. And very often, if you observe, there can be an imbalance in the people that are talking about this. Totally fine, it's understandable. We're all figuring this out. In my perspective, the masculine is only divine and the feminine is only divine when they are innocently, tantrically merged together in total harmony, no conflict between the two. Inspiration for change, maybe, but not conflict. There is no pushing away of the other. That is when it is divine. Let's look at yang and yin from a physics standpoint. Often, whenever ancient cultures speak about how to tell if something is more yang or more yin, they're looking at after effects, right? This is usually because the masters could feel it on a deeper level what was actually happening, but they didn't have a way of describing it. So the idea was, let's show you the after effects, which ironically is paradoxical to the actual energy sometimes. And then in that, as people would, the students would learn to cultivate their energy and their sensitivity, they would observe more things that are more on the yang end in their expression at that time, or more on the yin end in their expression at that time, specifically in nature. Because nature's not caught up in the head. It's not being told to be what you're supposed to be. You need to follow our ideas of what that is. It's just itself. And so they would sense these things, they would observe until at one point they start to feel, oh, there's an energy under it that's creating this. And they would feel it on a visceral level, on a deep level. And then they would start to feel those dynamics in themselves. And as many have demonstrated it is much easier to awaken when we have balanced the polarities in ourselves. This doesn't mean we're exactly equal on all sides, but we have learned to embrace the paradox of the dance of our yang and yin within us. On a physics standpoint, to me, I'm very excited about observing electrons being a particle and a wave because it demonstrates yang and yin. An electron, at its most yang, its most focused, actively driving life force in a specific expression is a particle. A specific expression in a specific point in space and time. Thus, it is most yin when it's in its superposition waveform. All possibilities are available now. And it can sense possibilities that it could not sense if it was still locked as a particle. At the same time, if it doesn't choose to take an expression and explore one of those possibilities, nothing happens. And there's no thorough investigation of the experience. But it's one thing. You can explore this in your own life. When you can understand what that feeling is like, you can begin to explore, when do I naturally feel in my innocent core that yin would serve? It would open up to possibility, it would help me disengage from something that isn't working. You know, the excessive yang has a pretty significant challenge with letting go of things that don't work. There's an obsessiveness to make it work, and it dishonors the yin that's saying, hey, that's not working. My sensitivity is saying that's not really working, and there's a better possible option over here that could work for all involved better. You know, we see this in a lot of our structures of power, right? Or what we would call that. Whether it's governments or religions, you know, it's like the obsessiveness of this is the experience, it has to be there. It's gone from an innocent exploration to a need to control because of fear of change, because of fear of being wrong or whatever, right? And if there's one thing I've learned in life, people will create hell for themselves and others, often appearing as light out of a desperate need to feel right. I've definitely done it. So I know what it's like. However, if we stay in a yin state too much because we're afraid of committing, we end up in a sort of messy limbo. There's no real exploration. There's no real growth within the lessons a theme can offer us. There's no like thorough creation. But if we stay too yang, we get stagnant in a different way. We get locked in. And anyone who understands metal, you know, because a lot of people associate yang with metal. By the way, yang, yang, whatever, doesn't really matter to, I guess. I say yang, feels right. So metal, if it is too hard, becomes brittle. Just the right pressure in the right way in the right place, and the whole thing falls apart. And we're seeing that in our society right now, in a lot of the structures we have. We're seeing that in how we're affecting nature. We're so obsessive with controlling how things are, that yang standpoint, that it's actually denaturing nature's ability to support us, or our ability to work with it. It's another way of looking at it anyway. Again, notice the paradox. A paradox in yang and yin is Often, what on a material level appears more yang, if you go to a higher level of reality, it's actually more yin, and vice versa. I've actually seen, it's funny, coming to that conclusion, and I actually have also seen some ancient Qigong teachings talking about this. So learning to feel these dynamics can help us sense how to navigate and dance with this reality. The yang and yin. When it's time to commit, when it's time to loosen up and open to new possibility. And of course, in my experience and those that I've worked with, it seems to work best when it's done from a place of innocence, joy, or at least that moving towards joy, and coherence, proper grounding. Grounding is a whole nother subject that can sometimes be misunderstood based on how it's often taught. We'll have a video on that. An example of a yang and yin dance. I just did a video on it, wearing the same shirt. Discussing, a lot of times how we're led by spirit, by an instinct of sorts to go a specific way as the optimal direction. That's taking a little bit of a yin role, like following what we're being led to do. And how in every soul's journey, there comes a point where there is no right answer, and it can feel terrifying. But in that moment, any choice we make, once we start moving towards it, gets supported. We become the yang focal point more so than usual, and the yin comes in and supports it. It is, of course, important for those choices to be based in innocence. That's the divine will always support innocent truth, which can take some time to really reconnect with and heal the relationship with. I say innocence, and unfortunately, there's a lot of misunderstanding about that. It's an embodied thing. But as much as we can come from that place of our deepest heart truth in innocence, the more supported we are, the more excited the divine gets, because that is the connection with the deep core of who and what we really are, what we were meant to be from the very beginning. At least that was our optimal path. And it is our direct connection with that which is generating yang and yin. It is the unification, the divine parentage within as the divine inner child. It's why I often, I work with clients who sometimes say, you know, for them, they're like trying to be more of a man or more of a woman or whatever. We're in a very interesting time where consciousness is trying to understand those dynamics, and some people are trying to reactively flip back into the old way because it's a comfort zone. And there's nothing wrong. There is some good stuff there that can be very workable, right? But because, our last 6,000 years at least were based on those old ideas. Things haven't really been working out. That should say something. But that said, there are also new understandings of what it is to be man or woman, because on a soul, we're beyond that. And so I tell my clients, come back to your innocence, heal that relationship with your being and your inner child, start to express from there, helping the adult and the inner child reorganize the whole thing in harmony, and you'll be exactly the man or woman or, whatever you choose. But for, if you go by that, the man or woman you need to be. You will automatically be what you were designed to be. with the right amount of yang and the right amount of yin in the right ways in each moment, allowing that to shift as it needs to for the optimal path in each moment. Just my perspective. I invite you to play with it. Notice your relationships with others. What do they take on more around you? And when? When someone becomes more yang in your presence, do you unconsciously become more yin? Sometimes that could be a good thing if they're actually the more accurate person to be guiding a direction at that time. Sometimes it could be just a thing we do, and then we end up getting drawn into things we don't want to. If a person becomes yin around you, do you reactively become more yang? Is it from a place of innocence and gently like assisting in a direction? Or is it fear of the yin? The fear of the openness, the sensitivity, the possibility. I have a friend, and I notice he's very naturally yang. He has a very gentle heart, but in many of his actions, especially when his mind's involved, he's very yang. And we would play a lot of games together and stuff, and hang out. And I would notice that if I wasn't careful, because of his energy, I would start to become more yin and actually feel like I was somewhat losing myself. We have this almost instinctual programming, and it's a very unconscious thing, where if someone around us takes on a yang role, even if it's a distorted one, which unfortunately is more common than we think. Both sides are, right? Again, only divine when they're together, ultimately. But they take on these roles, and then we're almost programmed, especially if we've been less aggressive in life, which there's a healthy way to have resolve, not be angrily aggressive. And I have a whole nother video on that. We tend to just yin out. We tend to almost get hypnotized by them. You know, they call it charisma. Instead of saying, okay, in my center, in my innocent center, how do I actually feel with this person? There have been many very charismatic people come through Sedona, being the kind of place that it is. And they get here, and the first thing they want to do is show how, look at me, you know? I understand it. We want to feel valid. Like, we want to feel validated. And especially if there is an insecurity, there's a desire to feel validated so we don't feel so insecure. I get it. And often they, especially with men, but I've seen some of this with women in their own way. Let's say in the case of those who truly identify as men and women, there's this kind of like, you know, you get what I'm saying. This kind of like, I'm self-made man, all this guys like it's very, for a lot of people, it's very alluring, you know, and they do that because they know that it's a way to get that attention and all. And it's usually not long before Sedona breaks those guys. She has a way of doing that. Shows them what's really there. And they may ignore it for a while, but eventually it comes out. They didn't have enough of their yin to be true, and they weren't enough in their innocence to be really real about what all was there. And the funny thing is, coming from that place, that innocence, that true, like you can embrace both and be honest in both energies at the same time, confidence and humility, People are actually way more naturally interested in that because they want that in themselves. And the best part is if you're in that place of innocence, you're not doing it to try to manipulate anyone or get them to love you. You're just being you, and the love is there because you're being yourself, your real self. I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, let us know. I'll be happy to dive into it for you. Thank you.